Hoping to make it a bit interactive. This one just before the coffee break. I definitely don't want to stop you from getting your caffeine, so hopefully you can get some dopamine here with one of my first slides. Okay, I think we'll begin. Hello and good morning. My name is Anthony Lam. I am head of product at iProov. We're a London-based AI company specializing in facial biometrics. And because of our work, we're often the first responders to new threats in the biometric world. This, of course, includes some of the previous things like presentation attacks. And in the era of generative AI, that is a lot of deepfakes. And so my first, I'm just going to jump right in. My first question is, which of these photos is a deepfake? How many of you think the one on the left is a deepfake? Okay, about 40% of the room. How many of you think the one on the right is a deepfake? Okay, more. And how many of you think both are deepfakes? Okay, half the room. Just one. Today, deepfakes are so difficult to recognize, right? If you look at the left image, actually what you'll see is that the ear is bleeding into the earring. What you'll also notice is on the right carbuncle, it doesn't connect. And so it's these little details that humans, in the moment cannot really spot. You're really going to need some more advanced things to detect these things. About 5 years ago, one of the only known deepfake scams was a voice deepfake that cost a company $200,000. Today, deepfakes are everywhere. So we've got online personalities being deepfaked. We have Elon Musk being deepfaked. In fact, he's the most deepfaked person on the planet. We have execs being deepfaked, new hires being deepfaked. AJ talked about this. And it's just constant. We have everyday people being deepfaked. And just last week, Facebook found that $43 million were scammed out of Australian pockets. I think the scale of the issue today is so great. I do want to spend the next 20 minutes talking about maybe what a deepfake looks like, how they're being created, and how they're actually being weaponized. But here, firstly, a quote from US Homeland Security. What we're finding is deepfakes aren't just an issue in the enterprise, or it's not just issues in identity verification. It really just is an issue across the board. You're looking at national security, financial services, and just everyday people. So deepfakes today can be used in two ways. They can be presented. So with presentation attacks, this is sort of like the traditional method of attacks. We have prints, we've got screens, and we have masks or 3D objects. Deepfakes can be used in a presentation way. So typically what an attacker would do is they create a deepfake on a computer, and then they load it up into the phone, and then just present this phone right in front of a camera, right? And that way you're trying to spoof the system into recognizing that, oh, okay, maybe that's a real person. The more sinister and more scalable way, though, is when they inject the actual attack right into the payload. So there are two steps here. The first step is defining the actual entry point, so how you're actually injecting this payload. You can use something called the virtual cam. These are quite popular. These are off-the-shelf tools. You can actually write the code, or you can use some other man-in-the-middle method. The second step, then, is actually then building out what you're injecting, so actually building out the payload. It falls into usually 3 categories of manipulated video. We can do replays, which is using some existing streams and payloads. You can splice things up together, or you can just generate some new media. And so that's actually what I'm going to dive into. This is where generative AI really scales the problem. Specifically in deepfakes, we have 3 main types of deepfakes. We've got face swaps, which is swapping my face, maybe, for someone else's face. We have motion reenactments. This is the one that's most common for Elon Musk or celebrities, where you take a video and then you change the way their mouth moves, maybe change the way their actions are, so that you can then create a whole new deepfake. And then you've got GANs. I'm now going to break down actually how they're being built, and then what attackers are actually using to go and inject that payload. So this is a tool called Deepface Live. This is just an off-the-shelf tool that anyone can purchase, can use. What we typically do here is we upload a reel or a photo of myself, and or of anyone, really. And then the tool itself detects the landmarks of the face. So they're looking at maybe my eyes, my mouth, my nose, and those key features of the face that we're going to swap with. We upload some stranger's photo from the internet onto the tool and swap the face. Now, if you remember, step 1 was actually identify the injection point. So here I've got Manycam, which is another off-the-shelf tool that is a virtual camera. And this virtual camera will allow us to replace what maybe a webcam is seeing with anything that I want to appear. Here I've got my face swap with a stranger's face that I'm going to send straight into the payload. This is exactly how attacks are being done today, and this takes minutes. This is one reel that I've created using one face swap. In seconds, I can create 4 face swaps. And some of these actors you might recognize at Authenticate. They are our biometric experts. So a scavenger hunt for later, if you can identify who they are. A couple of them were present on stage at some point this morning. But this is minutes. So imagine what can happen in hours. Imagine an attacker running scripts day in, day out, trying to break systems, right? We're talking about a scaling issue in the millions and soon to be billions. So let me break down the threat landscape into the different tools. So again, in terms of the deepfakes, we've got CGI, we have motion reenactments, we have face swaps, and then virtual cams themselves can also create things. And so these are all the different tools, or not all, sorry, it's not exhaustive at all. There are almost 1,000 tools in each category, but these are some examples of tools that you can use today to try to spoof a system. And I would highly encourage you to check them out. Each of these are its own software, of course, which means continuous updates. If you look at some of the academic research here, some of the most common computer vision research today is in these categories of CGI, in face swaps, in adversarial attacks. And so because there's more research, these tools are being advanced quicker and quicker. So software updates are coming more frequently. And that makes it more difficult for systems to prevent. An example of a combination of attacks would be using one CGI tool, then reenacting it with another tool, say Crazy Talk Animator, and then swapping the faces with Face Magic, and then just shoving and injecting the payload using DroidCam, right? This is one combination. Each of these in combination are going to create new parameters, right? And new things that biometric systems need to defend against. And so I'll talk about sort of what you need to be careful of when you're looking at biometric systems. But the amount of deepfakes that have gone up since last year is 700%. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The second trend I want to talk about is actually the evolution of the injection. Today, we've been monitoring sort of native injections and emulator injections on desktop. And what we've seen is that it's consistently growing across the 2 different spheres. So in mobile injections, like iOS and Android, attacks have grown 300% just from last year. Emulator attacks, which is being able to emulate maybe like an Android device on a desktop, that's also grown nearly 400%, right? It doesn't matter what kind of tool you're using. It doesn't matter what platform that's happening on. Attacks are scaling across the board. So you need to be able to defend not just on the tool that you're looking at, but also that maybe if you're deploying something in the future, you need to consider that. The third trend I want to talk about, these are 2 actors that we've been following over the last year and a half. One is Machiavelli. Machiavelli specializes in face swaps, and Herodotus specializes in emulators. They're both 2 different types of attackers. Machiavelli works mostly in financial services, and they are also in 2 different parts of the world. Of course, these are just code names. I don't actually know them. But Machiavelli works in financial services mostly. Herodotus mostly on public services. So 2 different types of actors, similar trends. 2 different regions and similar trends. What we're seeing is that in each of these, if you notice with Machiavelli, let's say on the left side, when it comes up, Machiavelli is actually using a new tool that he found. It dips a bit because he realized, OK, it's not really working. This is representative of the amount of attacks that he's trying to launch. And then once it comes down a bit, he's looking for that new tool, Again, from that list, he just picks some other tool that might work, and then it scales up again, right? And comes back down, and it scales up again. And each of this happens usually in 60 days. So attackers are sustaining this because they see the benefits of this, right? We're talking, one attacker could be launching attacks up to $43 million in Australia in benefits for himself. I say him because we've seen the person, and it is evidently an evil Machiavellian man. The thing is, as we're monitoring this, it's interesting that despite these actors not being able to pierce a system, they're not stopping. And so that means out there are tools that are letting them through, and there are tools that are not letting them through. And I think that really falls back to the previous panel about maybe what tools can you trust and what tools can you not trust. But I think the most important thing when you're trying to buy a tool is understanding the attack cycle and the defense cycle and how they balance this, right? It's the yin and the yang. With the attack cycle, we're talking about attackers like Machiavelli, Herodotus. They are accumulating knowledge. Each time they're using this new tool, they're trying to figure out, does this work? What doesn't work? And then how do I then make it even better? They then refine their attack, they generate new attacks, and they launch these live attacks. In these live attacks, it's important that in your defense cycle, you can actually see these in real time. Because if you're not seeing what you're being faced against, you don't know what you're defending. You don't know actually how you're defending. And so it's important that whatever tool you're using, whether it's biometrics or not biometrics, that you can actually monitor these tools, monitor the attacks. And so in the defense cycle, I think the most important things is, let's start with maybe the attack detection and disruption, making sure that you can actually see these attacks, right? Going into rapid evaluation, making sure that if you're training models, let's say you're using AI, and you're training your algorithms, you can do this really quickly and evaluate it really quickly. Defending, adapting, deploying, all of this needs to be fast. And I think in the world of identity verification, of course, both of these come in and they are at play. I think the most important thing now with generative AI is this piece. Attack generation today is so quick. This happens in minutes. And if your defense cycle is not reacting in the exact same speed, then you're just falling behind. I've got more trends in our threat report. If you want to scan the QR code and download this, this covers a lot of the threats that we saw in 2023, and we launch this annually. So feel free to follow that. Yeah. Otherwise, find us at booth 311 this week. Thanks.
So for those online or here, we can ask questions. We still have a couple minutes for Anthony.
I'll load up I don't know if I can go back. Can I go back? Oh yeah, I'll just keep this one up here just in case anyone missed the QR code.
And if you are shy, you don't want to come up to the mic, you can submit your question via the app, and I can ask the question for you.
Hi, I'm Keith Butcher, CTO at Apple Security. We make a biometric authenticator. You've talked a lot about face and voice deepfakes here. Are there biometric factors that are more or less susceptible to deepfaking?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, in my opinion, I think voice deepfakes are probably one of the easiest to create and hardest to detect in terms of because you're working with less information. With voice deepfakes, voice can be affected in many ways, right? If I'm sick, my voice is coarser. If I am maybe hungover, I speak slower, right? And so the indicators that you're looking at, maybe the measurements that you're taking when measuring a voice, an audio recording, changes with a lot more environmental changes. And so I think for me, what we've seen is voice biometric tools have no longer been used in the same way than we previously thought. Last decade, one of the more popular tools was this "my voice is my password" thing in financial services. Today, that's not really used, right? And today, I think a lot of it is maybe used as a initial factor, just to check, okay, is this person speaking at all? But it's not used as an authentication tool anymore because it's not trustable. Yeah, I'd say. if you're trying to deploy a new tool, probably avoid voice for now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Sid Maskett from US Bank. I saw that in one of your earlier slides, you had something about 3D modeling, and the obvious thing that comes to mind is Face ID. Do we think that we're getting close to a point where you could use an AI to attack that?
Ooh, this one is tricky. I think so. I think the interesting thing about Face ID is my criticism of Face ID is that it lacks the ability to monitor. Because Face ID is a biometric tool that's within the device, manufacturers aren't actually able to see what kind of attacks they're getting in front of the infrared camera. I think that it is a matter of time before we crack this. It is a technical problem, right? It's not impossible to break. It's more difficult. So I don't know when, but it's not impossible. And so because it's not impossible, I think it's just a technical problem, and it's just a matter of time before it's broken.
So Anthony, we have a question from online or from the app. What are the things that an enterprise can implement to protect themselves against the rapid attacks?
The rapid attacks?
Yes.
So I think the most important thing is what I talked about in the previous slide, which was the rapid defense cycle. I think the most important thing is being able to monitor the attacks that you're getting in real time, being able to actually see, are attacks coming in, what kind of attacks are coming in, and then whether my system actually is defending these attacks. Because the tools are advancing so quickly, what you thought that you were defending actually might not be happening. So one example that I have is with a customer around emulator attacks. I was talking to them last year, and I said, emulator attacks are a really big thing right now. It's going to be coming, especially on your systems. They said, oh, no, we're fine. Like, we've blocked emulators on our SDKs. No one can use emulators, so we're fine, right? It's a you problem, not an us problem. That same day, I looked at their traffic, and they had 7 emulator attacks, right? They just are not seeing what is actually happening in their systems. And that lack of insight, or any sight, is going to hamper their defense. Yeah, so I'd say monitoring, being able to actually observe the real-time effects.
Anybody else? All right. Maybe I will do the last question for you. Just because we have time, I want to give you the session. Anthony, what you would say that with the generative AI, right? What else we can overlay to help protect our customer, besides just keep it updated and work with like updated the algorithm? What else can we do to overlay the identity verification to make it so hopefully not friction become the next security, right? But what else can we do?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and I think for me, it all falls under this defense cycle. The defense cycle isn't just the ability to quickly train an algorithm and then deploy the algorithm. I think even within that, using AI to defend against AI is one amazing solution, and that's exactly what the defense cycle covers. I think part of the defense cycle is also about educating the people who are those first responders, right? The ones who are on the ground having to experience these attacks. So this could be educating customers. This could be educating your staff. Keep them informed about what kind of attacks are out there so that they can then better defend themselves and defend your system. I think it's multi-layered. I think, if you're not using AI to defend against AI, then it's going to cost you. Hi.
Sorry. My name is Kyle Peterson. I'm with Gisa Credit Union. What are you using, or what would you suggest to use as primary indicators of compromise, or what do you see as primary indicators of compromise whenever you're developing a defensive life cycle? Or I guess that
from your perspective as a
security engineer, sorry, we're a fintech. We currently deploy lots of biometric already in our environment, and so you made a lot of great points. And my now thought is, God, how do I even develop a defensive life cycle to look for indicators of compromise? How am I going to purple team this? What am I going to do to create my my SIM alerts? How am I going to create that strategy?
Ooh, this one is a tricky question. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. I mean, especially because how you design your system, it has to suit your needs and your use case, and maybe some of the attacks that you get. What we've seen with financial services and public services, for example, between the two different actors, they're totally different. Machiavelli scales his attacks in a way that has immediate financial benefits. So, for example, one of the customers that Machiavelli was attacking were crypto customers, because the sign-up bonus that they get was $25 per sign-up, right? And by faking the KYC and then creating these face flops of genuine users, he's racked up millions, right, in some systems. And whereas with Herodotus, public services, not so much, right? I mean, and so I think it really depends. But I think the ability to maybe have some, for example, going back to monitoring, having some monitoring system and being able to just observe what the attack landscape looks like in your world, then allows you to identify, okay, how do I defend against this or that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you forget to say, I think first line defense when it comes to biometrics is we need liveness spoofing detection, right? It's a must-have, the first layer. I was trying to hint you to it.
Sorry, for me it's a given, yeah.
Trying to lead you to that, Tony.
Yes, having presentation attack detection, having some live detection, making sure that you have matching as well in that paramount.
Correct. All right, with that, last call. If not, then we're gonna give you guys
we have another question over there. And if you forget, if you come up with a question later, find us at the booth this week.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My name is Ivan Zinkov, One Notary. We came from a little bit different approach of verification. Our notaries verify identity, and we came to this to this conference to figure out how AI identify people. From your perspective, how compare AI and human? This is the first question. And the second question, how good KYC, what the percentage of real, how hard to crack KYC at this point with the biometric liveness and detection? Thank you.
On your first question, do you mean a human doing the verification versus a AI doing the verification? Yeah, I think my first slide with the two images on the screen, there were very varied responses with which one we believed were the deepfake, which one we believed were real. In fact, half the room thought that both of them were deepfakes, right? And well, that would be a false reject. I think that it's quite well known that humans are not the best face matchers or even deepfake detectors. And I think that deploying AI to be able to do this stuff is extremely cheap today. So if you're not doing it, I think the question is, why? It's extremely affordable and probably cheaper than a human. I think maybe the idea of deploying something like that is a bit scary today, or maybe compliance hasn't reached that point to almost mandate it. But based on the ability of humans to do the stuff, I think that's also a matter of time.
Just a clarification, the person can verify on the real conversation. This is one of the benefits it provides. And is it possible to verify the person in the conversation? So AI kind of have a communication with the person, and if you would make the conversation with one of these people, probably human would recognize it better. I don't know. Just curious.
So one of the headlines that I showed was the example in Hong Kong where Authentication was scammed because one employee of the company thought that the CFO was in the video call, and then they were scammed out of $25 million. Video conferencing doesn't make it, just because you're having a conversation with somebody, doesn't actually mean that you're having the conversation with that right person. So if you're not doing, if you're not doing live detection or face matching in those calls as well, then you're also leaving a gap in your defense. Your second question.
Regarding KYC, is it
Right.
how good are they? Like,
Yeah, I think there are a lot of KYC tools out there, and I think KYC has many layers as well. I think Chris earlier talked about some of the world of identity verification and the documents. So that's one aspect of it. Making sure that you're deploying AI on the document side is extremely important, and then using AI to deploy it on the biometric and the matching side is also important. I think it's difficult to say how good they are because I think one of the questions that came up in the last session with Dean was we saw so much variation even in a standardized test. So you got to just pick some of the, a good solution that works for your use case. Yeah.
All right. I lie. Actually, there was a question on the app. So one last one. I think this is the last one. Before the break, I promise. A lot of tools were listed on what can be used to create deepfake. What are some of the tools for helping organizations to detect deepfakes for incident response team to react? This question is from Babadia.
Okay. So deepfake detection tools are, well, I build deepfake detection tools, but you have a lot out there. I think you'll also see a lot of the vendors later today who do this work. Teresa's work also does some of the stuff. And so I think I didn't want to go into solution mode, but we can have a conversation definitely later this week. There are a lot of good tools out there. You can lean on FIDO and FIDO certification to see what kind of tools are really good against defending deepfake presentation attacks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.